Hello, educators. Welcome to my very first podcast on technology and education. My name is Nanak. I am a PhD student in University of Massachusetts Amherst. My research interest is in technology and education, especially about the role that technology can play in our teaching. So, in this very first podcast that I'm doing right now, I want to talk about one tool that is becoming the talk of everyone. That's true, it's none other than ChatGPT. So, this is basically becoming a concern, especially for educators around the world. Recently, I've conducted 2 webinars with teachers in Indonesia, and I can share many concerns of them about, their worriness, and some of them very helpful about this tool, but many of them are worried about how disruptive this tool is and whether this tool will replace teacher. So I think I can share that kind of concern. If you listen this podcast through a video podcast, you can see right there a meme that I created about my feeling when I first knowing about this tool. However, of course, we have to remain hopeful, remain positive in these disruptive times, because I believe this tool, ChatGPT, is not going to be the last one. I think there will be more and more coming in. And as educators, we have that capability to basically, adjust and survive and improve our teachings. So in this podcast, I want to talk more about ChatGPT and how we can integrate that into our classroom so that, no matter how disruptive the tool is, there is always a way to basically maybe make this tool as a helper or enhance our teaching. So I'm going to divide the podcast into 3 segments. So in the first segment, I'm going to talk a little bit about what ChatGPT is. And then in the second segment, I have invited one teacher, my colleague, Miriam Banda, to talk about her concern and also experience in using the tool. And then in the last segment, I will talk about ways to integrate this tool into our classroom. So let's get started in our first segment. So what is ChatGPT anyway? There are a lot of talks about it, right? But in a simple way, ChatGPT is artificial intelligence based tool. It's using language model, or we call it as large language model, or LLM, developed by OpenAI. So OpenAI is a tech company with the goal to make AI accessible for everyone. So it uses natural language processing, or NLP, to sound like a human, but it is not human. It doesn't understand what it says to us. It's just using sort of, a string of text, like to predict what's going to be the next, if you, for example, give this tool some prompts. So it uses that kind of text predictions. That's why the products or the outcomes of this tool would be depending on our prompts, okay? Like, how clear our instruction is, and how concise it is, so that whether we ask the tool like in a clear way, so it will produce the different result as well. So right now there are like a lot of things going on about how to give sort of the right prompts to this tool that you might want to also read about that. So how does it get the data? Basically, it gets the data from training. So they're like, let's say there are a lot of people actually train this tool, like feed this tool information based on a large corpus of text data from a wide range of sources, like books, articles, websites, other text-based materials. And the most recent version with the training data was until September 2021. So that means this tool, ChatGPT, has very limited information after 2021. For example, like if you ask this tool about who wins the World Cup 2022, it doesn't know. Okay, it knows it was held in Qatar, but it doesn't know the winner. But obviously, it keeps improving. I believe there's ongoing training to improve the data, and it will be more sort of up to date. So that is a little bit about ChatGPT. So in other words, it is a chatbot. So you ask or you give prompts, and it will generate the results based on what you ask or based on your prompts. In the second section, I will talk with Miriam Banda about her concern and also experience in using the tool because, as I mentioned in the beginning, a lot of teachers are worried about this tool, especially when it comes to plagiarism. Okay, because obviously this tool very smart. I would say super smart. It can answer almost all kinds of questions. It can make perfect, I would say almost perfect essays. So in writing classroom especially, it's sort of becoming a lot of writing instructors are worried about it. So like the students will use this tool to generate their own writing, and I can share that as well. Definitely, it what is it called? The student will find ways to use the tool that maybe not in an ethical way. So welcome, Mimi. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Nanak. I am great. Thank you for having me today.
It's very honorable for me too. Thank you so much. Could you tell a little bit about you and what you do?
So I am a teacher by profession, and I've been teaching high school life skills history for the past 10 years. However, right now I'm sort of like trying to go into tech, and most recently I joined the digital design media program.
Sounds great experience for you. Okay, so as the topic is about ChatGPT, something that is now, becoming a talk of everyone, especially educators. We'd like to know your opinion about it. So the first question is, what do you know about ChatGPT, and have you ever used it?
Well, Nanak, I mean, who hasn't heard about ChatGPT?
I know, right?
Everybody who is interested in anything to do with tech and education sort of like knows what ChatGPT is all about and what's happening. So I have used ChatGPT for a number of things. Sometimes even just to get a head start during assignments, I've done that. But as a teacher, I've also used ChatGPT to actually sort of like develop my lessons. So I like how ChatGPT gives you sort of like a structure. And so if you're stuck on what you can do, you can just use it as a structuring for your everything that you want to do in class. So I've used it to develop my lesson plan. Not that I took myself and my experience away from the lesson planning, but I used it to just give me a head start, like a heads up. You know how as a teacher we usually are overloaded with stuff. So having something like ChatGPT, I feel like it helps me to have more time with my students, because then I do not spend so much time trying to think about the structure of the class that I'm going to have. So it's amazing. And for me, I feel like it's here to stay, and I'm happy we have it for now.
Okay, so we've already heard some positive perception about ChatGPT that Mimi has said, and how she uses it in her classroom, mostly for helping the administrative staff, so she could have more time taking care of the student. I think that's already a good way. But could you tell us a little bit about your opinions about the pros and cons of using the tool in teaching, especially?
Well, in teaching, to be honest, as a teacher and right now as a PhD student, I feel like it does take away the originality and your personal experiences from that. And I wouldn't like to have So I am a history teacher. I am a
Mm-hmm.
history teacher by profession. And I love it when students write about what they think about those events, historical events. Now imagine a student just brings up something from the internet, from ChatGPT, and gives it to me as their work. I don't think they are going to be totally engrossed in the learning process. And I believe that as a student myself, we need to use it with caution, because at the end of the day, we need to utilize and analyze the things that we learn in class. Now, if we are just sticking to ChatGPT, I believe that we will lose the essence of learning. We will lose the essence that there is in education, which is to bring out the total essence of a man. So my views about using ChatGPT in class are that it's good, but at the same time, it needs to be used with caution. As a teacher, we are past the point where we can say my students shouldn't use this for assignments, because obviously they know that there's a loophole and they're going to use it. But right now we have to say, what do I do in the face of ChatGPT to ensure that my students' learning is on 100?
Right. I couldn't agree more with that. What you say. I highlight some of your statement about how that, I think you share other teachers' concern as well about the possibility of plagiarism and cheating, or maybe sort of, sort of lowering the standard of learning. What is learning if we keep using this kind of tool, right? But at the same time, I agree with you that banning the tool probably not a good idea, because student will always find a way to use it. Maybe that's very insightful opinions and perception about the tool that I hope can inspire as well other teachers that are listening to this podcast. And then in the next section, I will talk more about how we can integrate the tool to the classroom and strategies to basically use it in an effective way. Mimi, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Nanak. Bye.
Bye-bye. So everyone, that is Miriam Banda talking about her experience and also advice or recommendation in using the tool. I highlighted some of her statement about that, how she uses the tool to just sort of, get a heads up into her teaching, like helping her in the teaching and also student. But she, uses in moderation. Is like, not depending on the tool, and I definitely agree with that. So right now, if at this moment you are thinking about using the tool, but maybe you sort of have no idea how to get started, so I'm going to tell you 5 ways to introduce ChatGPT to your classroom. So this is only to introduce, okay? Because there are many things that you have to do, or there are many methods when you basically use it with your students. So the first way is you need to check its privacy policy, okay? So you need to ask this question: how does the tool regulate user data? And this is very important because I am one of the advocate of critical view or critical perspective of technology, because I believe the technology not only gives but also takes away something from us. So there is no such thing as free technology, you know what I mean? So that, checking the privacy policy, the data policy is very important whenever we want to use technology, especially if we want to ask our students to use it as well. If they need to make their own account, so we have to really make sure that we understand how they regulate privacy policy. So in ChatGPT, basically, they can share our data to third-party vendors, and then you also have to know that only students over 18 years old or above 18 years old can use ChatGPT. So if you are teaching K-12, for example, then maybe I would recommend that you not ask your student to create an account because they are under 18 years old. So in that sense, maybe you want to use your own account to share with your students. So once you're done checking the privacy, and then you make sure that this tool actually is safe and ethical, another step is to audit the tool. Okay, you can ask this question: what does the tool take when using it? So this is very important, because a lot of time what teachers think about new technology is how to use it in the classroom, but we barely ask this question: what does the tool take when I use this? Because remember, I mentioned that the tool always takes something from us. Like when we integrate one technology, it will change the other, it will change many things as well. So the tool basically, you have to do this with your students together, so your student can decide for themselves whether this tool is actually appropriate or ethical. Okay, I'll put it in the resources that you can later access, and how to audit the tool. There are some methods you can use for that. The third way is to stipulate the tool in your syllabus. Okay, what's your policy about this tool? Okay, if students are using it, whether you allow it, whether you ask your student to actually write that they use ChatGPT in their assignments, for example. So you also have to discuss this with your institutions. Okay, what their policy about it, because sometimes like you cannot make your own policy if it's against your institution. So have that some kind of discussion with your institutions. Number 4, okay, which is you have to explain the limitations to your student that ChatGPT, although it looks perfect, it has a lot of limitations too. For example, like not all the information it provided to us very accurate, and sometimes it tends to make up information. It tends to provides misleading information, and that can sort of promote misinformation and disinformation. And also, like when you use the free version, it tends to be at capacity, so that means like your student not gonna always have this tool accessible. There are times that they're not gonna be able to use this tool, so in that moment they need to be able to work on their own. And the last one, which is we have to use it in moderation, because as Miriam has said, we cannot be dependent on this tool, because the essence of teaching is not just only transferring knowledge, but also is about how we connect, how we build community of learning with our students. And when we use this too much, maybe we'll lose the essence of teaching. So my final advice is basically to use the tool as our personal tutor or personal assistant, if that is for teacher, which is help us in our teaching, help us in our administrative staff, because right now we have so many things going on our plates, right? So that's my ideas on how to integrate it, and I want to close this to spread some positivity for us, that we have to make sure that maybe you start thinking about banning the tool, but I would say that's not a good idea, because AI will be the future, so students need to be able to interact. They need to know how to interact with AI based tools, because a lot of work later on requires this kind of skills. And also, the student will always find a way to use the tool anyway, so that's why banning it maybe not a good idea. What we can do is to adjust our teaching and improve our teaching, and use this tool to sort of enhance our teaching. So there are 3 messages that I want to say to conclude this very first episode of the podcast on technology and education. My first is that with the coming of a lot, more and more AI-based tools, maybe we have to start thinking about, do we keep learning, for example? Okay, that's my first message. It means like we have to stay current. As a teacher, we have to stay current. We need to always ask ourselves, do we keep learning? Okay. And then the second message is, do we keep evolving, in a sense like we have to stay relevant? Okay, we have to always know what's going on outside of our classrooms. Because technology development is very, very fast, and we have to know that as well. And then the last one, do we teach like a robot? Because I think that's very important, which is we have to be humanizing, in a sense like, when we teach students, we have to really know our student, build connection, personal connection with our student. We have to know our student well, beyond their role as students, but their personal personal as well, personal connection with our students. Okay, at the moment ChatGPT cannot yet have that kind of emotional trait, but we never know, maybe in the future. Okay, it will be becoming smarter. So right now what we have to do is we need to make sure that we teach with a heart. That's my first message. So that's it all. Okay, thank you very very much. I put some additional resources for you to explore on your free time to know more about these tools. That is going to be in the transcript sections of this podcast. And I hope you found this podcast useful and helpful. And also, my goal is to sort of, bring some positivity about, new technologies and how that can improve our teaching. We can be worried, but we cannot be worried all the time, right? At the end of the day, we have to move on. We have to embrace, okay, our teaching amidst the disruptive time. Thank you very much for listening to this, and I'm looking forward to all of you in the next episode. Bye bye.